Welcome to the bonus segment to the Detroit Electronic Music Conference. Today we have Mr. Michael Fotias of the Audio Rescue Team. He's going to be doing a workshop on mixing, the mixer, the sound for big festivals. So thank you again for Mr. Fotias for coming in, and we'll get ready for your presentation.
It's my pleasure to be here to support the auspicious work that your school does in teaching young people how to do it right. So thank you for inviting me again.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is going to be my 5th year in presenting this presentation, which when Ron came to me about his idea, when this idea for having this wonderful school where young people could become and taught by industry professionals, not only the aspects of producing music itself, but how to use all of the tools that make music and video and those things that we enjoy in content so much, how to use those tools correctly, taught by industry professionals. And this presentation that I'm about to give, this again is my 5th year giving this presentation, and I custom designed this in order to teach, if you will, how to get the best performance out of any sound system that you walk up to, whether it be a small pair of speakers on stands like this, all the way up to the time when you will get to a point where you're performing at larger shows on a big stage with a larger sound system, to give you some of the tricks of the trade and the easy 1, 2, 3 things that you can put in your brain and easily remember when you get in any given situation, how to get the most out of the sound system that you're working on for your performance. All right? So I'll direct your attention to the screen here. I have some slides that I'm going to present. And then I also have some examples that I'm going to give you that are real-world examples in how to take the information that I have within this presentation and apply it in your work, whether it's here in the studio or out there in the real world performing. So this is the name of my presentation, Performance Sound Optimization and How to Get the Best out of the sound system or any sound system that you may be using at that time. I'm going to take a minute here. I'm going to just talk a little bit about myself and what my qualifications are. This presentation is a few years old. I've got more than 32 years in the game in all aspects of production, meaning not only sound, but sound, lighting, video, structures, production management, etc., etc. I started out as a DJ myself. In the late 80s, I had a mobile DJ company called Elite Sound Mobile DJs. That was how I got started. I got started playing at high school dances and birthday parties and wedding receptions. In fact, I had my company before I had a driver's license. My mom used to have me put my gear in the back of the family station wagon and would take me to these events that I would DJ at. That's how I got my start. After that, I had a stint as the national sales manager of a power generation company that specialized in power for concert tours and large live events. I was also the assistant supervisor of the show electric department at the Florida State Fairgrounds down in Florida, which basically is a 300-acre outdoor and indoor exhibition site. And I was responsible for not only shows and plugging in the power and designing the systems that powered those shows, but also infrastructure improvements and maintenance on the grounds there. I worked at a local sound company, which became a national and worldwide touring sound company here in Detroit called Thunder Audio, which is our contractor at Movement that provides all the sound systems at Movement. I worked in the fabrication shop building racks and power distros and cable trunks and those sorts of things. And I was also a site coordinator for events. Moving forward, as Ron most graciously spoke about myself, I am production manager for Paxahau. My scope of work includes, but is not limited to, the Movement Festival, Detroit Jazz Festival, some parts of Grand Prix, and a lot of events that we do throughout the year. I think Paxahau produces something like 100 and some events besides the festival throughout the year, which all aspects of technology come across my desk. I am president of Audio Rescue Team, which is a wonderful team of individuals that I work with in not only producing shows, but installing sound system, lighting, and connected technology all over the Detroit area and beyond. ART Technology, which is our low voltage company. I am a member of the board of directors of the Detroit Sound Conservancy, which is an organization that promotes keeping the heritage of our music scene here in Detroit alive into perpetuity. Some of the manufacturers that I work with are Void Acoustics, Acoustics, and I also have a little company that I own with another partner of mine called the Stereo Club. We do vintage hi-fi gear and things like that. Okay, so that's a little bit about me. I love sound equipment, and I love putting up great sound systems. My second passion is I love teaching the things that I know to people that want to learn about it. That's why I'm here today. So I just want to stress, especially for our live audience, since you're here, if any of this stuff, you have a question that pops into your head, if we wait to the end of each group, you can hold your hand up, and I will most certainly answer any question that you have to the best of my ability. Okay? Some of this stuff is highly technical, so don't be afraid of it. I'm going to explain it in very simple terms. And again, if you have a question or something, please feel free to ask me that question when we get to a break in between the slides. Okay? So, when you get into a situation where you are actually taking the music that you've made or pre-recorded music of other artists, and you're going someplace where you're going to perform live, if you will, outside of wherever it is that you practice in a studio like this or at home or make your music, there are a few things that are important that we need to keep in mind. And terminology is one of them. Okay, it's important to study yourself up just like you study up on how the machines themselves work and the terminology of how we make music. If we think about how we make music with modern devices like these young men we're working on over here, we have drum machines, we have keyboards, we have samplers, we have sequencers, we know what a sequence is, we know what a sample is, we know what a musical note is, we know what a phrase is, right? Just like it's important to know what those terminologies are in regard to manipulating those instruments or that DJ mixer or that Serato turntable or that CDJ or that turntable, it's important when we're getting ready to go out there and manipulate a sound system that there's some basic terminology that we understand. Okay? We're going to go through that right now. And these are the 6 things that I'm going to touch on, though they're not all the important ones. They're kind of the tippy-top important ones. AC and DC in relation to distortion, which I'm here to tell you, besides a grumpy sound guy, distortion is your worst enemy when you're out there trying to put on a great performance. We're going to speak about that. We're going to speak about what gain and gain structure is. We're also going to speak about headroom in relation to the noise floor and equalization and feedback. Okay, I'm sure we've all heard that nasty noise feedback occasionally. We're going to talk about that and how to avoid that in any given situation. So if we look at the screen here, I've got examples on the left, and the top, what I believe you're looking at is the top left-hand corner of the screen. And if you look on the left side of the graph, there's a long word that says amplitude and 2 shorter words that say sine wave. Okay? When we're looking at an audio signal, the scientific example is this example in the top left-hand side of the screen, which is a smooth wave, okay? And that is an alternating current wave. What that means is between 0, the wave alternates up and down equally within a certain time period smoothly, okay? Now, music itself, when you look at those waves on either a tone generator or a sine wave generator or a display, it's going to look more like its example to the right of the pure sine wave where it says complex wave, okay? Moving more towards what distortion actually is if we look at the bottom of the screen now, all the way to the left, that is a simple triangular wave. Again, if you look on the amplitude side where the 0 is, it moves up a certain value and down a certain value and back to 0 within a certain time period, okay? Time period X for now. We're not going to get too deep into that. Moving even closer to what distortion actually is the picture on the bottom right-hand side of the screen, which is square wave. Now, in electronic music production, a lot of times to get a certain aesthetic in the sound, we're looking at a square wave sometimes. We're using that analog synthesizer or that mod of an analog synthesizer or a computer that mimics an analog synthesizer. Some of these waves that I'm going to speak about as distortion on the side of making sounds are nice or something that we're looking for, but for the sense of how we're running a sound system and how to keep your signal clean, we're going to look at a triangular wave or a square wave as being that bad thing that we're trying to avoid. Okay, so I just wanted to delineate the two because I always get the question, well, what about my DCOs and my filters that make square waves that I like the way that that sounds so much? That is a completely different thing than what we're speaking about right now. All right? A clean signal versus a distorted signal. And what we're going to get into now is what these signals look like display-wise and the electrical mechanical system that is the way that our human body hears. Okay? I've always said that part of being a great musician and producer or a great sound technician is first understanding how this computer and these sensing devices relate to each other to get the result that we perceive as human hearing. The other part of that is the manipulation of the electronic devices that produce that result into the way that we work, our human hearing as a system. So if we move to the next slide, I've got a slide here that's sort of how our hearing works is such a miracle of nature. This is a very short explanation of it. But in essence, how we hear is an electrical mechanical system. The mechanical part of it are the little bones that when a sound wave hits our eardrum, those bones are manipulated and it stimulates nerves inside the inner ear that send the signals to the brain. The most insidious thing that we're looking at in regard to horrible byproducts of a distorted signal is something called ear fatigue. Has anybody that's in my live audience here ever heard of what ear fatigue is before? I see a couple of head nods. And what that is there is a small mechanism within that electrical mechanical system that is our hearing system that when we have a distorted signal go in there for a long period of time, it protects the mechanical part of our hearing from overexcursion, i.e. the hairs inside our ears that are very important, the little cilia hairs that are very important to our hearing, the eardrum itself, the cochlea and the little bones that move around in there to create the electronic signal. When the ear is like, this has been too loud for too long, sound pressure wise, it has a limiting device that stops that from happening, and it's supposed to warn you to get out of wherever that is before you permanently damage your hearing. This is what ear fatigue is, and it's a phenomenon that is referred to as TTS, or temporary threshold shift. Still to this day, there's a lot of scientific experimentation that's going on, and especially in the sound reproduction community, into how this is actually happening inside our physiology and what causes it to happen. How this is important to you is, and this is one of those points that I want you to take and record in your big brains and keep it there forever. Once your audience is ear fatigued, they will have to be unexposed to that stimulus for hours before they're un-ear fatigued, to make it very simply. So once you have made the mistake of over pushing what you're sending to the audience, they're done. Your performance is over in regard to the quality of the sound. Okay? Here's the worst part of it. A distorted signal, if we go back to this slide here, I'm going to go back, I'm going the wrong way. So distorted signal, clean signal on top, distorted signal on the bottom of the screen. Another function of the way that our hearing works is our ears perceive a distorted signal as being 10 times as loud as the same signal that's a clear signal. So what does that mean? It means over a shorter exposure time to that big distorted signal, you're going to get people to ear fatigue sooner, way sooner than if you're giving them that clean signal into their eardrums, right? And really, about an audience coming and enjoying your performance, what this whole presentation is about is giving that audience the performance that they deserve so that they have a positive opinion about your performance when they leave the venue. They want to be like, man, the music was great, but I don't really know everything about why the performance was great, but I loved it. And part of that is not causing ear fatigue. I will tell people over and over and over again, in my experience as an audio designer and in my experience as an engineer mixing live bands, I'm always trying to get that mix that's perfect, but I'm always looking for something that I can turn down in my mix. rather than, and we're going to get into that deeply here in a minute, rather than louder, 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 louder to get the mix that I want, we're looking at, okay, there's a portion of my mix that I want louder. What can I turn down to subtractively make the parts that I want louder be louder? And this is how we avoid ear fatigue, which is the most insidious thing to ruining a performance that you might go out there to do, is cause ear fatigue amongst your audience too soon, okay? We're going to go forward again here. And we're going to talk about the first thing in line, which is the gain control. So remember, like the slide says, gain and volume are very similar concepts, but their difference is very important to your mix. Volume is how loud the output of the channel or the amp is. It controls the loudness, not tone. Gain is how loud the input channel of the amp or mixer is. I'm going to give you an example right now. We're going to put a little bit of music on here now, okay? Before we get into the gain structure, I'm going to roll this track, all right? And you'll have to excuse me, I'm on new tools here that I don't use very often. I have to get my Serato Master Dean up here to run this for me. Okay, so we've got Detroit Artist Aux 88 here. So I'm going to switch over here to the mixer so everybody can see it. So, can you hear me on the microphone well as well? Thank you. So what we're looking at here is I've got the left-right from this mixer running into this Mackie console here, which a console like this is something that you're all going to use very often, okay? And this is my gain control. I'm not going to touch EQ right now. We're going to touch on that in a minute. And these are my volume or my faders, okay? How these relate to each other is if you look at these white marks above my middle and my index finger, that is when the console is at something that we call unity gain, which will be in the next slide that I'll show for a minute. What that means is wherever these gain controls are set, input-wise, when I raise these faders to that level, that gain is full out, okay? That means that all of that electricity that you're putting into that input, when I'm at unity, that's all of it. Now, some particular products, if you look on this mixer, I don't know if you can see it on here. If we go back to the mixer, it shows Unity 510. Because this isn't a modern mixer, there's a cheat in here, which we're not going to get into at length. But Mackie in particular will give you 6 to 8 dB above Unity, even when the gain is set at that Unity gain. And that's a whole nother subject that we're not going to touch on today. But it's important to understand that when you're mixing, this is rolling again. What I want to do is, here's the solo button. So I push the solo on that channel, right? And when I turn the gain up and down, it's going to show me what my electric gain is, okay? And we get a nice signal on that channel, just peaking just over 0, right? And then we're going to switch over to the other channel, and we're going to get that one just peaking over 0. And then when I bring this up to unity, got a really nice signal on both channels. This is the difference between volume and gain. This is my volume based upon what this gain setting is at. This knob on every mixer you use, whether it's a Pioneer DJM 900, whether it's a Serato Rain mixer, I don't care which mixer it is very important to take the time and use these features that are on there, i.e. on a DJ mixer when you're getting ready to get a mix before you bring that second fader up, looking at the level control as the gain control is set before you manipulate the volume. Because that's always going to tell you, if you look here, I can push that solo button and it's already telling me that I'm right at 0 dB where I want to be. Simple concept. Once you use that a few times and make sure that everything is balanced electrically in that manner, you're going to find that your mixes are going to breathe and completely come alive rather than have everything pushed into clip and having no place to go tonality-wise, right? So we're going to move forward here now and talk some more about this. This is my next slide, which talks about gain structure, okay? And The concept of gain structure is that at each connection between the components in the system, the signal level is as high as it can be to minimize noise, but no higher than the maximum level that either component allows, so as there's no distortion due to overload. Okay? Overload meaning clip. I'm sure that most people in this room that have used some sort of electronic device that plays back music knows what a clipping sound sounds like. We understand what that is. We don't want that. We don't want that. And most certainly in a situation where right now we only have 2 channels, but on a console like this Mackie 16 channel, where we may have all 16 channels filled up with inputs. We want to start with things at 0 dB so that when we start adding signals, the signals pile up on top of each other. You've got this signal, then this signal, then this signal, then this signal, then this signal on top of each other. The next thing you know on your output, you're out of sound system. That's what we're going to talk about next. So if we look at the next slide, this is a very important one, okay? So, noise floor. I'm just going to ask a question. Does anybody in this room know what that means? Nobody? Okay. Yes. Yes. This room right now has a noise floor. The chair turning, the noise from outside the window, me creaking around on the floor, the whispering going on in the peanut gallery over here in the background. Okay? All of those things pile up, and that is the actual floor of the sound in the room or even the outdoor space. Okay? If you look at this chart, the distance between the noise floor and the maximum capability of the sound system, that's called your dynamic range. The simple word is that if you have this much sound system, and I'm speaking relatively because what this much is depends on how many speakers, how many amplifiers, how it's, etc. If you have this much sound system, your noise floor is going to take up part of what's available there. This is what we have to keep in mind when we're on a rig, no matter what it is what is the noise floor in the space. Making sure that when we start out, we're starting out just above that noise floor and not up here. Because for impact in our performance, we always want to have someplace to go. We don't want to start out up here, which we've seen some of these people come on at 3 in the afternoon, and I'm going to say this with levity, playing their 4 in the morning tracks all the way at the top of the level of the sound system. There's no place to go, and it busts the vibe, and it just makes for a not so great performance. If we think about this dynamic range as being our money in the bank, okay, and starting out slowly so that by the time we get to the end of our performance, maybe we haven't even spent all the money in the bank yet, right? We want to hold that as our asset. There's also a thing that's called signal to noise ratio, and the only reason I'm going to touch on that right now is this thing that I showed you over here on this mixer, where you're balancing the gain against the volume, gives you the best signal with the least amount of noise. Because all of that extra noise does is if you've got something cranked all the way up, let me make sure that's stopped. If we go back over to here, I'm sure you'll be able to hear it on the audio. So my mains are all at unity. My inputs are at unity. I'm sure that if you're listening to this right now with headphones on, there's hardly no noise in it. Okay? If I go here and I put too much input level, do you hear the noise? Yes. Now, when your performance is going, you may not actually hear that noise, but what's that doing? Take a guess, it's adding to the noise floor. Now your signal has to be even above that. If you've got a system that's got a dynamic range or headroom of 100 dB, now I'm talking about acoustic, when we measure with a dB meter, I don't know if you've ever seen sound people rolling around with those where they measure how loud the system is. It's like a little box with a mic on the end of it, okay? Let's say that the maximum acoustic output of the sound system is 100 dB. If you've got a noise floor of 92, what do you got left? Not much, okay? And taking this and adding it to the top of that only takes away the amount of dynamic range and headroom that you have available. You're taking your own money out of the bank. That's why balancing the gain Oh, let's go back. No toys yet. Balancing that gain and that volume are very important, okay? Because we don't want to add more noise floor that we can control to the part that we can't. The people shuffling around, yelling, clapping their hands, carryings on, if you will, okay? Whether we're in a club or a festival scene or whatever it is, we want to keep that noise floor as low as possible. I could talk about this subject for 3 hours on its own and everybody in here would be sleeping, and we don't want that. So, let's talk about equalization now, okay? I've got some pictures of some equalizers in here so that we can look at things that look like they're familiar, that you've probably seen. This is a Clark Technic DN360. All of us that are children of the analog age know this thing well, right? We've seen it a million times. It was one of our favorites. I feel very fortunate that I actually still own one of these. They're probably putting it in there with the, they'll be putting them in there with the gasoline-powered vehicles soon, right? This one right here is the same thing, but instead of at each center frequency, there's a knob. You might encounter something like this. Some of your DAWs that you look at, where you're looking at a computer, where instead of you actually have a rack mount module, you've got a virtual rack mount module. These are some of the things that you might see in there that look like they're manipulated the same way. They provide the same result, okay? Let's see here if I have, I almost tripped myself on my microphone. Okay. Now, not too much unlike those first two examples that I showed you, being this particular device has a knob for every industry standard frequency that is available, okay? That's why it's called a third octave, because it's got a slider on every frequency that's available. Same thing here, this has a knob on every frequency that's available in that. I don't want to get into why the standard is, but it is, but every frequency that's a standard frequency, there's a knob or a slider for it. 31 in all. This is something that you're familiar with looking at. Everybody in this room's seen this, right? And I'm sure all of you watching in virtual land have seen this. I believe this is a DJM 900, is it? Yeah, and it's a 900 Nexus, which is sort of the old standard now. This is maybe a Nexus 2 here. This equalizer that's in here works the same way as the other two that I showed in the pictures before. It's the same thing. Remember how I just spoke about gain and what that does? This knob, each one of these knobs is a gain control at that set frequency. Okay? That's all it is. All it does is there is a frequency at the bottom, particularly in this mixer, it's around 80 hertz, and then at the top around 150 hertz, and if you imagine a square, 80 hertz, 150 hertz, when you turn that knob up and down, the square goes up and down, okay? So essentially, it's a gain control that turns those three center frequencies up and down. If we think in this mindset, in regard to what we just covered and how important gain structure is, okay? I'm gonna show you right now how you can get backed into a corner really bad by misusing this device and totally blow out your dynamic range and headroom and your noise floor, or understand how it works and use it to your advantage. That's what we're going to do next, okay? So I'm going to put my track back on here. I'm going to do this. I had to just put the bottom part of my glasses on it. Excuse me for 1 second. So I'm going to turn it down a little bit. So I'm going to turn this down a bit so you can hear me initially. Same scenario here, more frequency adjustability. I know, right? You've got a high pass at 12 kilohertz. Then you've got a mid frequency that you can sweep. What that means is I'm going to take this EQ knob, the boost, and I'm going to turn it up a little bit. And as you can see, I can sweep this around and it changes the frequency that I'm adjusting. That's the only difference. I'm going to leave it centered at 600 for the sake of this demonstration, and then the low is set at 80, which is a lot like that DJ mixer that we looked at. Now, you've probably walked up to a DJ mixer and seen where somebody has left it like this before. If you notice that if I turn all of these EQ knobs up the same amount, what's happened? There's no change in the EQ, it's just louder. Okay, it's just louder. That makes the example of how your EQ is a gain control at those frequencies. What ends up happening let me put this back at 0, and I'm going to show you. And I want to turn the gain down so I don't blow the school's nice speakers up. So, unity, as we talked about. I come in hot. Look at how I'm clipping the DJ mixer. Same sound, right? Thinking subtractively. Obviously cleaner, okay? No distortion, same sound. Now, let's say we want a little bit more bass in our mix on those 2 tracks, okay? Well, how do I get more bass and not turn the bass knob up? How do we do this? We take the high frequency and the mid frequency and we turn it down. Just a touch. We bring our gain up. Okay, so listen for a minute. I'm going to do both examples. I'm going to use just the 80 hertz control to turn just the bass up. Then I'm going to flatten, then I'm going to go back and I'm going to turn all the highs down and turn the gain up. And you tell me if there's a difference, okay? You be the judge. So we're going to go flat. I'm just going to turn the 80 hertz up. The bass is louder, but it's a bit distorted, isn't it? Right? Now I'm going to turn the mid-highs down, and I'm going to raise the gain. Same result, clean. This is what I mean by subtractive. Young people learning your craft, anybody learning how to do this, if you take something from me today, 2 things. Turn it down. 2, mix subtractively. Okay? And I'm going to say this a bunch of times during my presentation. When you walk in behind somebody, and you're the second player, and the thing looks like this, do this. Start there. Trust and believe that your audience, after they've been dealing with that, and you walk up and do that, you turn the DJ monitor all the way off, and you walk up and you zero everything out and bring everything into the green, number 1, your audience is going to breathe a sigh of relief, and they're going to be like, I'm ready for what's next. This person's a player, okay? Number 2, that sound engineer is going to come running out from where they were taking a nap, because the first person had their stuff so pushed into distortion that they set their limiters and went and took a nap, because they can't do anything with it. All they can do is protect the system and step aside. They're going to come find you and they're going to stick their right hand out and say, hi, I'm Mike Fotias. How can I help you? How can I make your set better? Because it's a respect thing. When you respect the gear and you're an operator, that respect is going to come back to you, and it is going to enhance your experience as a performer and the artist and the patron's experience taking in your performance. Those 2 things, okay? So that's the example in, if you look at this next slide, how this all relates is to audio feedback, okay? And any imbalance in all of those gain stages that we spoke about speaks to this right here, okay? If you read this real briefly, it says audio feedback, also known as acoustic feedback, simply as feedback, or the Larsen effect, which is a special kind of positive loop gain which occurs when a sound loop exists between the audio input, and it says here, example, a microphone guitar pick or a guitar pickup, also the phono cartridge on a phonograph. It's the same. I'm going to explain that in a minute, okay? Gets in an amplified loop. We've all heard this, right? We've been at a concert, we've been at school. When somebody's speaking on the PA system, you hear that high-pitched whining sound, okay? Maybe some of you have experienced it when a DJ's on and they've got their gain and EQ imbalanced and the record's going, whoa. It's, put lightly, it's unpleasant, right? So there's a there's a very deep understanding of why turntable feedback occurs, and I'm going to keep it simple for sake of this presentation so that you at least understand it and how to use the tools that I'm giving you to mitigate those things, whether it's a microphone or a phonograph, or maybe you're doing a performance where you have an acoustic guitar plugged in, or there are a myriad of things that we can make beautiful music with that have an acoustic pickup of some type in them, that these concepts govern mitigating this, okay? If we, before we get into types of speaker systems, just like a microphone, look, there's a prop here, right? The way that this works, inside here, there's a diaphragm that has a coil of wire attached to the back of it, and that coil of wire moves in and out of a gap. When an acoustic signal hits that diaphragm, it vibrates, it creates an electrical signal, that signal's amplified, and it becomes sound waves, right? Same thing with a phono cartridge on a turntable. The only difference is the needle, which is on the end of the stylus, has a winding around it, and when that vibrates in the groove, it makes an electrical signal, so it is an acoustical thing, right? The other anomaly with turntables is not only the in-air vibration that can hit that tone arm and make those sounds go through that, just like a microphone, is the physical vibration of the surface that it's sitting on, okay? If anybody that actually is playing real vinyl or plans on playing real vinyl out, I will tell you that something that you need to keep in your bag with your cartridges and your needles and your headphones is 4 2-inch thick sponges per turntable, because if you're on a table that's rickety, you can take those sponges and you can put them underneath each foot, and it's going to mitigate certain frequencies by 50%. It's a cheap thing that you can keep in your bag. We used to use Wonder Bread or toilet paper rolls, or Dean, any other ones that I'm missing? Tennis balls. Just keeping something like that in your kit, and always making sure that your cartridges and needles that you're using are not worn, because a worn cartridge and needle will present more feedback characteristics than an unworn one will, and at really weird frequencies. Myself and my different teams at different events, we do turntables on very giant, large sound systems. So there's more forces in nature coming in there that you have to mitigate. But understanding the way that these things work, when you walk into an unknown DJ booth, when you walk up to an unknown sound system, is understanding that. So, in the final analysis, I have this engineering drawing here, which is my last slide in regard to the descriptions of the different sound systems that you'll run into. If you could put my slide up, please. So what we have here is, in sound design, we have digital tools, much like the digital tools that some of you may be using to make music, that work in the virtual world. And this is a prediction plot of a sound system that we predicted for a venue in a program that we called EASE. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to take any room and do some simple measurements of the room and type those values into the program, and it, in the computer's mind, it's seeing a 3-dimensional view of the room. But what it does for humans, as you see here, here's our 3 dimensions, it presents the deployment of that sound system in that space in 2 dimensions, so that we can look at it not only in amplitude, which is volume, and frequency response, right? That all the frequencies are being reproduced equally, okay? This is a line array system, not a point source system. But I wanted to show this to you because the last thing that I want to segue into my, out of my presentation today, is the possibilities for careers in tech and the entertainment business that are out there for anybody that's interested in it, you know? Some people have talent as a music producer. Some people have talent as a singer. Some people have talent as a musician. Some people may have talents as a rapper. There may be some of you out there that decide that you might want to pursue a career as a technical person, okay? I'm here to tell you that if you understand computers and you teach yourself a little bit about coding, there are opportunities for young people to break into this industry. There is a vacuum in this industry of young people coming into it that are enthused and motivated to be good technicians, good sound designers, good lighting designers, good structures designers. And the easiest way to do that is, if you are interested in that, is to get on your computer or your parents' computers and start sending out emails to local production companies saying that you're interested in it and you're looking for mentoring in the industry. I will tell you one more time that companies from my size, which I have 4 full-time employees and I have up to 15 freelancers that work with us throughout the year, from my size all the way up to the worldwide touring sound companies, are all starving for young people that want to break into this industry. And you can make a great living, travel the world, and work on all kinds of amazing things. Whatever genre of music is that you like, there is, again, a vacuum of young people coming into the industry, learning about this as a craft, okay? I have sound engineer friends that are younger than me. I'm 56 years old. I have some that are about half my age that broke into the industry years ago that are making 6-figure salaries doing this work. And if it's something that you have a passion for and you're interested in, there are many ways to break into the industry. And I'm telling you that the easiest way is to reach out to your local companies and say, I'm interested in this, I'm looking for mentoring, I'm looking for internships. All of the universities, including Wayne State University has a program right now for technical people in the entertainment business. All right, they had only music programs before. They now have a tech program for that, where they're taking you into the different theaters that they have at Wayne and not only teaching you the quantitative part, which is the numbers that we looked at, but the qualitative part, how to plug the things in, how to troubleshoot, how to run a show, how to do production management, et cetera, et cetera. And I just want to be here and stand up here at the end of my presentation, both out to the virtual world and those of you that took the time out here today, to understand that I'm living proof that if this is something that you want to get into, all you have to do is be dedicated and industrious about it, and you can make a living doing your passion. And that's whether it is in production or in making music or being a musician. As long as you decide that that's going to be your passion and you do it to the best of your ability, you can end up monetizing that and making a living doing it. Okay? Finally, does anybody here that took the time to listen to my spiel today have any questions for me whatsoever? Any question you want to ask me? No?
Is there any, let's say if I did pursue this in a career, what, besides, radio science, different types of sciences are
Great question. So the question for everybody in interwebs land, in case you didn't hear it because the young lady did not have a microphone, is what is the classes or the science and mathematics background that you need to have to pursue this career? I will tell you, I feel very fortunate that when I was in high school and in junior high, my mom, who's actually a retired teacher, made me do my science and math. And I hated it while it was happening to me, because I wanted to play sports and I wanted to be in 5 different bands and I wanted to DJ more. But my mom made me get exposed to science and math. And after my first couple of years in high school, I learned to like it because they started interrelating with each other. You know, when you take your first algebra class, you're like, ugh. But then when you take algebra and you apply it to physics as the science class, then the math is supporting the science and you start figuring out how things in the world work, okay, on a mathematical level. Those two things, physics and mathematics, dictate the way every object in this room that you're looking at works, okay? The electric, the acoustic, the propagation of sound waves in air, that is physics and mathematics. You learn those two things, you can go a million miles an hour in this business. And even in making and producing music, not just on the technical side, a strong grasp of mathematics and physics is going to help you understand what you're looking at when you're working on a deeper level, so it can be more meaningful and a better end product. Okay? Anything else? No? You don't got something for me? I'm shocked. Okay. Anybody else? Once again, on behalf of all my colleagues here at the school, I just want to say, I remember the first year that you asked me to do this, and this was a dream for you, standing in this space right now and seeing all of this lovely labs that you have set up in this space and feeling in the vibe in the space, and having to have been a part of it makes me so happy and brings me joy. So thank you so much, sir.
And I appreciate
I greatly
you, Mr. Fotias.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Dynamic presentation. And once again, this is Spinning. My name is Ron Johnson, aka DJ Jungle 313. Executive Director. Thank you for tuning in for the DMAC 2024, and we hope to see you again. And see you at Movement.
See you there.
Thank you.